Hello and welcome back to my channel. I'm Audie Jake and this video consists of days 13 to 16 of Autism Acceptance Month. For day 13, the prompt is, what are some aspects of being autistic that you feel don't get talked about enough? Well, honestly, I would say it depends on what audience I'm talking about it with. Like within the autistic community versus allistic people. There's a lot of stuff in the autistic community that gets talked about a lot. Like, for example, the autistic community talks a lot about how often of an organization Autism Speaks is, whereas many allistic people are completely unaware of this. I did already talk about this in a similar prompt last year, so I'll also bring up some new things. I suppose something I'd like to see talked about more is some of the more negative things like meltdowns or sensory overload, and discussions with allistic people on what they are, why they happen, and what can be done to accommodate these things and make it better. For day 14, the prompt is talk about connections, platonic and or romantic. What are some of the most important people in your life? Is it generally hard for you to connect with people? If it is, what kind of issues do you have with it? Do you find it easier to get along with other autistic people? So, I'd say the most important people are probably my immediate family members, parents and siblings. I've always massively struggled with connecting with other people and establishing relationships with other people. I haven't really had an in-person friendship since I was a child, so well over 15 years ago probably. The internet, though, is amazing for someone who struggles with forming relationships like I do. I do have several amazing online friends with people that I've never met in person. One example being my fellow autism YouTuber, Miserabby. Abby is a core person and is also answering the exact same questions that I am on her YouTube channel. So give it a watch if you feel like it. It's just a bit easier for me to meet and form relationships with people online than in person. I have also never been in a romantic relationship. Not from a lack of interest or anything. It's just never happened, and I have no clue how to go about anything like that. As for if I find it easier to get along with other autistic people, I'd say possibly a little bit. I mean, for instance, I don't have to constantly explain to other autistic people that I tend to take things very literally and might not understand sarcasm, because odds are they might be the same way to whatever extent. Day 15's prompt is, media is something that has the power to speak to a lot of different people in different ways. What are some media, such as movies, TV shows, books, etc., that really speaks to you as an autistic person? Something that you can really relate to. Well, I've had so many special interests and even regular interests throughout my life. From history-related topics such as ancient Egypt, ancient Rome, ancient Greece, to media like Pokemon, Stargate, The Simpsons, and many, many others. But I suppose something in particular that really resonated with me at a time when I could have really used it was a Nintendo DS game called The World Ends With You. A really simplistic explanation of the game is that Neku, the main protagonist of the game, wakes up and finds that he, along with a lot of other players, has to compete in a week-long competition known as the Reaper's Game, where losing means being erased from existence. I'm not going to say too much more, as I don't want to spoil anything for anyone who does want to play it. I truly believe that the game should be experienced for yourself, as it's a really good game. If you can't get your hands on the DS original, the game got ported to the Nintendo Switch a couple years ago, and I think it came out on phones as well if you want to play a mobile version. Anyway, a big theme of the game is Neku learning to broaden his horizons and connect with other people. Neku is someone who, at the start of the game, struggles with connecting with other people, and so doesn't really even try. And by the end of the game, he is able to connect with so many other people and actually has friends. He changes and grows throughout the story. 14-year-old me connected with Neku so much, I'd even say I see some artistic traits in Neku himself. There were several quotes too that really stuck with me throughout the years, such as when Joshua says, "Everyone has their own little internal world, a secret garden only they can enter. Each world follows its own internal logic, individuality, and the logic of one world means nothing in another. Understanding other people isn't hard, Neku, it's impossible," which resonated a lot with 14-year-old autistic me. Or the quote, "The world ends with you. If you want to enjoy life, expand your world, you gotta push your horizons out as far as they'll go." When the game first came out, I was a friendless 14-year-old in high school, and it just felt nice to see a character struggle with social communication like I did. And I suppose I thought at the time that if Neku could struggle with connecting with other people and still come out of the game with a close group of friends, then maybe I could do the same. I don't know. I guess I'd say The World Ends With You kind of inspired teenage me to not give up on trying to connect with and form relationships with other people, despite how hard or even impossible it might seem at times. I suppose you could say the game came out at the perfect time in my life. And the final prompt is, talk about discovering yourself as an autistic person. When did you first find out you were autistic? If you were diagnosed, what was that process like? How did you feel about it when you first found out compared to how you feel about it now? Have you gotten to a place of acceptance? What does being autistic mean to you? Well, I don't really have too much to say about this one. I was diagnosed when I was really young, like around the age of 5. And I don't really remember what the diagnosis process was like for me at the time. And because I was diagnosed early, I always sort of knew I was autistic. Although I'd say it wasn't until at least when I was in middle school that I started learning for myself what exactly that meant. Things changed for me when I started interacting with the overall autistic community on various forms of social media in my early 20s. I learned so much from the community, and it really helped me out a lot. So that's it for today. I'll see all of you in a couple days for the next couple prompts. Until then, goodbye.